The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description.
Who else could it be? For me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to this Louie T Network exclusive, the Command Post live training camp coverage. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. Of course, am your commander-in-chief, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Day number 8 of training camp was a low-intensity practice. I talked about Ron setting the schedule for the week and talking about pads on Tuesday and Wednesday, no pads on Thursday, back to pads Friday and Saturday to finish up the week. And so we'll get to how practice was today. Really not a lot for as much excitement as there was from me, at least. I told you yesterday was my favorite day of camp to this point. It was the most intense practice of the summer for the Commanders to date. For as excited as I was about camp yesterday, I'm as jaded today, I guess. Like kind of over today's practice. But this is necessary for the guys. This is less about the fans, more about the players, taking it easy on them, giving their bodies a chance to recover before you go after it again. Very heavy, high tempo, high rate of speed, and physical again with the pads back on. So, this is more about the players, less about us. This is not about how we feel. So for me as a fan, not really much here to talk about, not really much here to see. But for the players, it's a much needed day of kind of scaling back a bit and giving them an opportunity to not necessarily let their bodies heal, but not bang on it, with the pads being on and whatnot. So not a lot of really, a lot of competition, if you will. And that's what, training camp is about, competition. Not the highest level of competition today. So anyway, I digress. We heard from Ron Rivera. We heard from Kendall Fuller. We heard from Curtis Samuel, all at the press conferences, at the podium for their press conferences. We'll talk about those individually. Practice, again, not really a big topic of discussion today. I will say this. Sam had a much better day today. And, I mean, look, I don't want to call it a glorified walkthrough, but, it was probably a notch above that. Okay. It wasn't, the physical practice that we had talked about the past 2 days. The first team offense didn't go against the first team defense at all today. So that may explain why there was a little bit more success. As a matter of fact, I don't even think they went against the second team for much of the reps when they were in 11 on 11. I think it was a lot of the third team defense, and they shredded them. They started off the day with a couple of deep balls, one to Jahan, another to Diami, and Sam was extremely accurate. We know that Sam, his deep ball is spectacular. I've talked about that's, to me, one of his best traits. And in the NFL, and I can't stress this enough, one of the best opportunities you have to create explosive plays is the deep ball. And the separation in this league with the quarterbacks a lot of times comes down to who doesn't miss those opportunities. Most quarterbacks can hit the short and intermediate stuff. Obviously, there's different ways to go about that. Some guys do it with timing and rhythm. Some guys do it with arm strength. Others do it with a combination of both. There's athleticism, using your legs, things of that nature. Some guys do all of their damage from the pocket, not really very mobile. But really what truly separates quarterbacks to me is the guys that don't miss opportunities to hit the deep ball. I equate it to an open three in the NBA. You don't get those often, right? You don't get open looks, depending on who you play with. Gives you, and that's not any different than the NFL, right? Depending on who you play with is going to really depend on how you're covered, right? If you're playing with other, studs, if you're playing with other dogs, they can't double cover you because then somebody else is getting one-on-one, right? So you're not going to get the open look. If you're playing with the team where you're the focal point, and there's like what Terry's had to deal with essentially for his entire career up until last year, where he was getting double teamed, he was getting bracket coverage. He's not going to get any open looks, right? So it's going to be tough. But when he does get that open look, and open in the NFL, we've already talked about this, there's a fine line in the NFL from open and covered. And it's all about maybe having a step or two on a defender. That's open in the NFL. You're not going to get much more open than that. Anything else is more likely than not a busted coverage. And to me, the quarterbacks that separate themselves are the ones that can hit the deep ball down the field consistently. Don't miss those opportunities. And I think Sam is a guy that can do that consistently. So I like the fact that he was, hitting it today in practice against, lesser competition, which is what I always tell you. It's not my job to determine what competition I'm going up against. My job is to dominate that competition. And they were doing that a bit today. So just a couple of little, things to clean up from yesterday's practice. David Bada tore his bicep yesterday. He's done for the season, by the way. Ron, didn't want to give any updates as to what the extent of the injury is from a, standpoint of out for the season. We know. We've been around football long enough. We've watched. We know what a torn bicep means. He's done for the season. We've seen guys have sprained ankles and be placed on IR for the season. So we've seen much less get placed on IR. He's done for the season. Is David Bada. He's a part of the IPP, the International Pathway Program. So generally, he usually doesn't even count, towards the roster or whatever. But unfortunate situation for him. Saadhiq Charles back at practice today, dealing with that strained calf. And remember, today was like, I don't call it a walkthrough, but it was, like I said earlier, a notch above a walkthrough. So Saadhiq Charles could be out there. I don't think he's healthy. I don't think he's ready. Like, I don't expect him to practice tomorrow, to be honest with you. I don't even know what he did today. He was out there, but what did he actually do? I know Chris Paul took most of the reps with the ones today, if not all of them. So, again, I told you guys yesterday, we don't know the extent of this injury. I'm not going to pretend that we do. So I'm not going to condemn Saadhiq Charles. I just know it's not a good look for him because this is the thing that we've talked about. This is the thing that the coaching staff wanted to see from him. The ability to stay healthy. Availability is the best ability. If you're not available, how do I know what you can contribute? You can have all the talent in the world, but if you're not available, it doesn't matter. And that's been his issue. So at this point, we're looking at Saadhiq Charles and we're saying, you're probably not going to end up being the starter. You're probably not going to be the starter, but we can't say that for sure. And Ron was asked about Saadhiq being, potentially available for week 1 of the preseason. And Ron was like, I don't know. I don't think he's going to be ready for week 1 of the preseason. He's got some time, but even if he is, he's not going to be out there with the ones, more likely than not. You miss a significant amount of time in camp. They're not going to throw you out there with the ones. They're going to throw the guy that's been out there taking a lot of those reps. So this is Chris Paul's opportunity. He needs to seize this opportunity and not look back. A lot of times in the NFL, opportunities usually come at the expense of another man. It's just the way it is. And, you don't want to see a teammate get hurt, but that is your opportunity. That is your window. Climb through it, shut it, lock it, and don't give that opportunity back if you're Chris Paul. We'll see what he does with it. And then Kendall Fuller. Remember yesterday I had mentioned to you Kendall Fuller wasn't participating, in the team drills yesterday. Didn't really know why, but I said maybe that's some of that veteran rest that, you give out. Like, it's kind of early in camp for that, but whatever. He was back today, full participant, no issues. He was at the podium. There's nothing going on there. So that's good to know that yesterday was just giving a veteran a little bit of rest. That's it. So had a chance to watch a couple of those Kay Adams interviews. So her show apparently is called Up and Adams, and she's going around from camp to camp, you know, and interviewing a bunch of the players and things of that nature. Think she works now for FanDuel, like FanDuel TV or something. That's what wrestled her away from the NFL Network. Anyway, I talked about her being at practice yesterday, and there were a bunch of interviews that she had done. I still haven't seen the Antonio Gibson one. We'll talk about Antonio Gibson, AG. All right. His mama named him Antonio. I'm going to call him Antonio. We're going to talk about him a little bit later on in the show because he set me straight. I'm guilty as charged, okay? I'm not putting this on nobody else but me. He was talking to me, and I'm going to make sure that his message is received loud and clear to the masses. So he set me straight so that I could set the record straight. So we're going to talk about that a little bit later on in the show. But Kay Adams sat down with head coach Ron Rivera. She sat down with Chase Young. I haven't watched either one of those yet. I grabbed the Sam Howell one. I had time for that one, and I had time for the Jahan Dotson one. So I grabbed those two. I'm going to double back, get the Ron Rivera interview. I'm going to get the Chase Young interview, and hopefully the Antonio Gibson one will be present by the time I go back to grab the other two as well. But, you know, Sam is an interesting guy. I've seen, you know, a multitude of interviews with him now because he's a quiet dude. Like Jahan said, he's a lot like me. And Jahan, remember we watched him on the Second Win podcast, and he was talking about how, you know, he's a quiet, reserved guy. He's an introvert. You know, much rather be at the crib playing the video game and not out talking to people. And that's okay. You know, that's his personality. Sam's the same way. You know, I don't even know if Sam has social media. Like, Sam's a pretty reserved guy, and he doesn't say much, but he's, you know, obviously has to come out of that shell to be a leader. And that's what he's done this season. And, you know, listening to Sam talk. So Jahan had talked about them going to Chick-fil-A yesterday together. And so, you know, Kate brought that up. And, you know, they talked about several different topics. I didn't know he was a Cowboys fan growing up. I don't know how I missed that. You know, normally when guys get drafted, one of the first things you find out is what was the team that they rooted for as a kid. I don't hold that against them. Some people get really bent out of shape about stuff like that. Like KJ, hell is his name? What's the draft pick from Clemson that we took, the defensive end? Edge rusher. Why can't I remember his name? KJ Henry. That's right. He was an Eagles fan growing up, right? Like, that doesn't bother me. At one point, we were all kids and we all rooted for a team for whatever reason. And so now that he plays for the Commanders, he's a Commanders fan. Like, that's, you know, obviously he's going to put that Cowboys bias aside, you know, and he knows I got to beat the Cowboys because that's what the fan base wants, you know, me to do the most. It's destroy the Cowboys. And he did it last year with no problem. So it's not a big deal to me, but it was interesting. I didn't know he was a Cowboys fan. So obviously I've talked about this before with him. He's big on college. And most of it, I don't know if you've noticed, but most of the guys are like, I was watching an interview with Josh Allen, and he had on a Wyoming Cowboys hat. Like, these guys rep their colleges more than they do their NFL squads. It's just because college is what made them. It's where their allegiance lies the most. And most people can identify with that. You know, your alma mater is the place that you hold up in the highest of regards because they can't ever leave you, right? Like, Jonathan Allen could be traded tomorrow, right? After he leaves here, Chase Young could play for 5 different NFL teams. So your allegiance doesn't lie with one team in the NFL, but it definitely lies with that one team that helped you get to, you know, the NFL. So you see a lot of guys repping their colleges, and Sam is a UNC Tar Heel through and through. He can't stand Duke. She tried to get him to say something nice about South Carolina. He couldn't do it. she asked him some questions, to try to get to know him. And he said his favorite quarterback was Drew Brees growing up. Interesting. She asked him what quarterback in the league, does he admire, and he really didn't have one. He was like, it was Tom Brady. He's gone now. I myself, for that particular question, I would have preferred him to just be like, nah, I don't have one. Yeah, it was Tom Brady. And that's the perfect answer because he's not in the league. You don't want other quarterbacks in the league knowing you admire them. Like, I'm not looking to give, and it's not necessarily a competitive edge, but I don't even want a guy to know that I think his game is dope. I save that for, personally, I'll go up to him after a game. Hey, man, I really respect your game. I watch you all the time. Really model myself after you. That's cool, if you want to do that. But I probably wouldn't even do that, after it's all over, then I can say those kinds of things. I kind of take the Kobe Bryant methodology, if you will, right? Anyway, I digress. He said Russell Wilson is the guy that he really, and it makes sense, right? Similar size, mobility, kind of overlooked. Russell went in the 3rd round. He went in the 5th round. I think there are some similarities there. So, and somebody was interesting because somebody brought up yesterday Russell Wilson's statistics from his rookie season. I think it was something to the effect of 26 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 4 rush touchdowns, 2 fumbles, something like that in his rookie season. They went to the playoffs and they won a playoff game. They beat us. I mean, you remember 2012. I said I'd be fine with those numbers. I don't know what the passing yardage was, but I'd be fine with those numbers, because this year coming up is like a rookie season. Whether you want to acknowledge it that way or not, it's pretty much a rookie season for Sam Howell. Brand new offense, first year as the starter. So anyway, I digress. It was nice to get to know him a little bit and listen to him talk about some things, other than football. Jahan, he gave us the quote of the summer thus far. He gave us the quote of the summer thus far in regards to Sam Howell, and then we'll move on after that. He said, so Kay Adams earlier in the interview had said that Sam Howell was a question mark. And she said a whole bunch of things thereafter and kind of set the table to ask Jahan what he thought of Sam, and then talked about their trip to Chick-fil-A and this, that, and the third. And to that comment, Jahan went back and said to you guys out there, he's a question mark to a lot of people. This is the quote now. He's a question mark to a lot of people. But to us, he's an exclamation mark. Close quote. I'm going to say that one more time, because that's some pretty damn good stuff there. Quote, he's a question mark to a lot of people, but to us, he's an exclamation mark. Close quote. That's a hell of a statement right there. Bars is what we call those, right? I'm looking forward to seeing what Sam can do. Kay Adams had asked him about, or pretty much told him the thing that she had heard from the fans. She was going around asking the fans a ton of questions, before talking to the players. And she said the number one thing she heard from the fans in determining what a successful season was identifying the franchise quarterback. And remember, I just gave you guys a poll, and I was so proud of you guys for not choosing EB as the next head coach as the number 2 answer, or even number 1. I wasn't sure. I'm not going to lie to you. I didn't think you guys would be that crazy to make it number 1, but I thought it would be number 2. And you guys chose Sam Howell being establishing himself as franchise QB material as your number 2 answer. And that made my heart smile, because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. We don't stand a chance if we can't get ourselves a signal caller that can be here for more than 1, 2, or 3 years. We need a guy that's going to be around for the next 7 to 10, plus years under center is going to give us a shot. Whether we win or not, it's up to the organization to put players in place that'll help us get it done. But without a quarterback, you can put all the players you want in place. You're not winning a damn thing. So Sam was like, yeah, they haven't had a franchise quarterback in quite some time, and I know that they're looking for that, and I want to be that guy for them. We want you to be that guy. And Jahan, I didn't realize this. I'd been naming a bunch of these quarterbacks that Terry has caught passes from in the last 3 years. I didn't realize that it got in the double digits. So Kay Adams had asked Jahan Dotson, did he know, how many quarterbacks did Terry catch footballs from in the last 3 seasons? And Jahan, he tried to act like he was guessing. He was like, 10? He knew it was 10, right? I didn't know it was 10. I knew it was a lot. I didn't know it was 10. Damn, that's a lot. It makes sense though, because that 2020 season, it had to be every bit of 4, maybe even 5 in 2020. It's probably 4. Then there was probably another 3 last year, or 3 the year before. Might have been 4 in that COVID year in 2021, because it was Fitzpatrick, it was Heineke, it was Garrett Gilbert. I think those were the only 3. And then last year it was 2 last year. So I got to be forgetting somebody, because it was 2 last year. I feel like it was just Heineke and Carson Wentz last year. Oh, and Sam. Damn, I'm tripping. So yeah, 3 last year, 3 the year before, and 4 the first year. So 10. Yikes. She also brought up the thing that I told you, I'll die on this hill. When it comes to my receivers, I ain't bullshitting. Anybody want the smoke, you can get it. There's only like one true definitive team that I know for a fact is better than our trio. I'm modest when it comes to these types of things, but I won't put us in front of Cincinnati's. But anybody else, there's an argument to be made. I think the Dolphins, just with their top 2, is just so nasty that I don't know if they're just throwing Robbie Anderson in there, probably put some over us. But I'll argue with just about anybody about trios. And she said, I'll put your trio up against anybody's in the league. And that's how I feel. And Jahan was like, yeah, damn right, pretty much. Like, yeah, I second that. So I told you, people who know about what we got and what we can put on the field. Like, people who know that there's talent on this team. And if we get the right quarterback in, we're dangerous. There's a reason nobody wanted us to get a new owner, right? Especially the NFC East teams. There's a reason they didn't want us to get a new owner. Because they knew if we ever get our shit together, we're a problem. A big, 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 big problem. All right. So, let's talk about these pressers real quick, and we'll get out of here. Ron Rivera talked about, practice today and how it was a much lower intensity practice, not just from the standpoint of taking the pads off and kind of giving the guys a break in that regard, but also the tempo of practice. He said EB's been running these boys into the ground with the intensity. I talked about EB being on 12 yesterday and not letting up and having these guys hustle at every single turn. Didn't want any practice, any walking on the practice field. Coming out of the huddle, sprint to the line of scrimmage, like in and out, tempo. They're getting so much done. I talked about the tweet from Nikki Javala yesterday that, stated there's no standing around at practice anymore. Like there's constant moving. Everyone's working. There's no one just standing around watching. So today wasn't that, less reps, a lot of special teams today. So he was like, yeah, we sort of took it easy on the players today. Had a couple of physical days of practice with the pads going on. And obviously when you first put the pads on, your body's going to feel it. If you've ever played football before, that first day when the pads go on and you start hitting, it's a sumbitch. Okay, you wake up and you definitely feel it. So wanted to cut him a break today. They'll put the pads back on tomorrow and Saturday. Ron talked about the crowd again and said that he's looking forward to the Friday audience and then Saturday having that uptick again with everybody being out of work. So he talked about that. He talked about Saadhiq Charles's calf. Said that he missed yesterday, back out there today. Again, I don't think he's healthy, and I wouldn't be shocked if he's not out at practice tomorrow. We should get an update from the beat reporters out there as to whether Saadhiq Charles is out there practicing or if he's just off on the side watching or not out there at all. But that's been and so Ron, instead of focusing on Saadhiq Charles, and this is not good for Saadhiq, he immediately went to Chris Paul and talked about the opportunity that he's getting because of Saadhiq's injury. He's been out there for the last 2.5 days, essentially, Ron said, with the ones. And so, taking advantage of that opportunity is huge. Then they asked him about Mason Brooks, and Ron got that shit-eating grin. And I told y'all, when Ron likes somebody, he gets that shit-eating grin on his face. And I love the fact that at the end of, the statement that he made, because he talked about Mason Brooks, holding his own and doing some really good things. But at the end, he's like, man, he's got a long way to go, though. So that puts it in its proper perspective, because you could, hear some of the things that he's doing, and he's had a really solid camp to this point, and you could start running away with your imagination, letting your imagination run away with itself, and you could start to think that maybe this guy can make the team right now. Unless there are some unforeseen circumstances, Mason Brooks shouldn't be on the roster, but you just never know, right? We didn't think that Amani Rogers was going to make the team last year, and he did. And there were a lot of unforeseen circumstances, and it allowed that door to open for him, and he went through, and he shut it, and he locked it, and he made the team, and he had a solid impact last year, one that we thought was going to carry over, and we were excited to see. And then, of course, the injury occurred in the offseason. So talked about Mason Brooks, and then he elaborated on what it takes for a late round draft pick or an undrafted guy specifically to make the team. And he went into, what they have to do, grab your attention and then keep it, be consistent. And so, we'll see what happens. Camp is cool, but the game is even better. But it has to start in practice. That's how you get their attention. So the games are how you keep it and give yourself a chance. The player interviews were extremely quick today. Almost to the point where you're like, did you cut some of this off? Curtis's was 3 minutes roughly. Kendall's was like 2.5 minutes. I'm like, what's going on with these short pressers? Normally, at a bare minimum, you're 3 minutes. We didn't get either one of them got to 3 minutes officially. So not much there to digest. Kendall Fuller did talk about Emmanuel Forbes's maturation. I know a lot of you have seen some of the past breakups. You've seen the pick six from the practice on Saturday. He's gaining confidence. And Fuller said, one of the things I've harped to him was trust your instincts. This guy has keen instincts, which speaks to the 6 pick sixes, NCAA record, and all the interceptions that he had in college. Trust your instincts, man. Go out there and play ball. Trust what your eyes see and react accordingly. And he's starting to do that. So he said that you could see he's starting to gain confidence. He's starting to play with that swag that they know he's fully capable of. Fuller said there's a lot of talent in that secondary. A lot of talent. And I feel that way. I feel like there's a lot of talent, so much so that I think guys like Percy Butler are being overlooked. Everybody's going straight to Quan, Martin, and everybody's talking about, Defoe, and rightfully so. He had a big year last year, and Cam Curl and all these guys. And I don't blame anybody for overlooking Percy, but I'm telling you, don't overlook Percival Butler. And Ron even mentioned his name yesterday, unsolicited, by the way. He said, guys like someone had brought up Defoe and his speed and how he played pretty much every single snap the back end of the season after that Eagles game. And Ron said, in talking to Jack, we just want to get as much speed on the field as we can. And guys like Defoe with that skill set, that physicality, that speed, that range, you got to get him on the field. You got to find a way to put him on the field. He said, another guy, don't rule out Percy Butler. And I keep telling y'all sleeping on Percy. He's year 2, just like Defoe was last year. He's year 2. It's a massive difference, night and day, between a rookie coming into a scheme for the first time and a second-year player much more comfortable in what he's being asked to do. I'm just saying, I know Quan Martin's the new shiny toy. Everybody gets enamored with that. Don't sleep on Percy Butler. So, Fuller was talking about all the talent that they got in that secondary, and it got me to thinking. And so I went and I looked at the roster, and there's quite a few defensive backs. It's 90 players, right? So clearly you got to fill it out somehow. A lot of receivers, but a lot of DBs. I'm going to be interested to see not just who makes the roster, because I think we have a good sense of who's going to make the roster, but you can't be 100% sure. There could be 1 or 2 standouts that, all of a sudden, after the first preseason game, you're like, yo, who the hell is number 23? He's out here making plays. Like, there could be one of those, but my guess is we have a good working knowledge, barring unforeseen circumstances. We have a good working knowledge of who's going to make the roster. I'm anxious to see who's going to be kept on the practice squad. It's going to be highly competitive. It's a lot of corners that we have. Like, we shunned Rashad Wild Goose after last year. I ain't sleeping on Wild Goose. Ron keeps bringing him up for a reason. They went out and they went with intentions last year, and they purposefully went out and got Tariq Castro Fields, right? Like, I don't want to sleep on those dudes. Part of the reason they could feel comfortable in cutting ties with Cam Dantzler Sr. is because they felt good about all the corners they had already. Even the undrafted and late round guys, they felt really good about those guys too. So I'm actually anxious to see what the secondary looks like. Not just the starters, some of these backup dudes. Because as we know, you can't have too many corners in the NFL. Impossible. So then we heard from Curtis Samuel. And never, ever trust a man. 2 first names. He was making Beyonce references at the podium, said, I feel like I got a halo on my head. And then he says, what did he say? I'm just crazy in love with the game. So he was, I saw what you did there, man. You didn't think I caught it. I saw what you did there, man. I heard your jokes. Beyonce's going to be at FedEx on Saturday, for those of you not in the know. My wife is going to that concert, so she'll be there along with my sisters, and they'll have a great time. I'll have the house all to myself. So Curtis talked about the offense and, how he's going to be utilized. He wouldn't get into specifics. I'm glad he didn't. But, he's like, look, man, I'm just happy to be out there. My skill set is unique. I can run it. I can catch it. And it allows, EB and everybody to, try to get the most out of me by using me in a multitude of ways. He talked about EB's presence, and he's like, yeah, EB just wants, the most out of us and the best that we can provide. And, sometimes you need a coach to get that out of you. And, we know that his yelling and all that stuff is coming from a place of love and wanting us to be the best versions of ourselves. So, we don't take it personal, and I think he's doing a hell of a job at coming in here and holding us accountable. There's that word again. So, again, they were 3-minute pressers. So You're not going to get but so much from those. But anyway, I digress. Let's get to the comment section. There wasn't really much to take from day 8 of camp. Anytime you get out there, you want to see Sam and company, getting busy, and they did that. But today was more of special teams, getting the special teams some work. Sam and the fellas did have some 11-on-11 work early in practice. Again, that was against the third team defense, so they took advantage, and good for them. That's what you're supposed to do. So let's get to the comment section and see what you guys have to say. Gear Cell 1, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, Gear Cell 1 writes, at work enjoying the content. Just saw Dan on Fox News wearing all-white polyester suit with a flannel turtleneck and 1990 Converse. Tragic. Hey, look, man, watch your mouth when you're talking about 1990s Converses now. At one point, Converses, you know what? I'm tripping. I'm thinking about British Knights, which I know about those. Not a damn thing. What were Patrick Ewing's shoes? They weren't Converses, were they? I think they might have been Reeboks. I don't know, man. I think them Patrick Ewing's was some off brands though. They might have been like Converse or British Knights. Derek Coleman had some shoes. I think he had some British Knights. Y'all young kids will never know anything about some BKs. Let me stop showing my damn age. Gear Cell 1, thank you for the super chat. Not an all-white polyester suit though, man. That's hot and it itches. Jordan like the GOAT. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, will you be making a 53-man roster prediction? Of course I will. What kind of a question is that, Jordan like the GOAT? I do that every year. I don't put that stuff out this early because so much can change between now and the third preseason game, right? Like, as we get closer, after the first preseason game, probably closer to after the second preseason game, that's when it becomes more crystallized. And I usually put out my 53-man roster prediction, and then I see how close I get. But to do it now would be asinine because anything can happen, right? And you know what I'm talking about. So I don't want to. And then guys could step up, and I told you the back end of the roster, the final 5 to 7 spots are what are up for grabs, and there's so many conversations that we can have, and we'll eventually have those conversations. And I've told you guys that already. 6 receivers versus 5 or 7, 4 tight ends versus 3 tight ends, right? Like these are some of the conversations. 4 running backs versus 3 running backs. And it's not always running back versus running back. It's a running back versus an extra linebacker, or it's a extra wide receiver versus an extra tight end, or an extra wide receiver versus an extra corner, right? Like you don't know who you're competing with for that spot. It's not always just a guy in your position group. It could be, hey man, we really want to keep a 10th offensive lineman. So instead of keeping 9, we're going to keep this 10th, or instead of keeping 10, we're going to keep an 11th, which is a big number. Normally the number's 10. You go, we need to keep this 11th offensive lineman. We don't think we're going to be able to sneak him through, and somebody's going to snatch him up. So in order to do that, I might have to cut a receiver, right, that I really want to keep, but I think I can get him onto my practice squad, so I'm not tripping. So instead of keeping 6 receivers, you keep 5, which I don't think is going to happen. I think they're going to keep 6 receivers, but that's how sometimes these, conversations happen, right? It's not just receiver versus receiver. So the preseason will give us clarity on that, and we'll have a better understanding of what exactly is taking place. So I myself am going to kind of wait until probably after the second preseason game, when I've had 2 full games to assess these backups, who's stepping up, who's made a name for themselves. I remember, I think it was 2 years ago, one of the corners, the nickel corner from Detroit, had a really strong third preseason game when everybody else kind of shit the bed. It was a terrible performance against the Ravens. And he was one of the few guys that played well, and he earned himself a roster spot. And that can happen, when you get to the back end of the roster. So I'm gonna wait, but I am definitely doing that. Trust me, Jordan. Trust and believe. Thank you for that super chat. Red Wing 01, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, Red Wing 01. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, I find it hard to believe they'll keep less than 6 corners with 7 realistic guys. Kendall, Juice, Forbes, Danny, Sip, Castro Fields, and Wild Goose. Those guys are all in the discussion. Remember, all 7 of those guys, with the exception of Forbes, were here last year. So there's a familiarity with this group, and I could see. So the number in my mind is 10 for the secondary, right? 5 corners, 5 safeties. That number could easily be 11, and it could be 6 corners and 5 safeties. Because I think we feel like we know the safeties, right? It's going to be Curl, Defoe, Martin, Revo, all pro Revo, and who am I missing? And what's my man name? I just brought him up earlier in the show. Why am I blanking on his name? Shucks. Jesus. I don't know why I'm blanking, but the 4th round pick from last year. It'll come to me. But those are the 5 safeties. You know, I don't think anybody else is going to make the team out of that group. 6 corners is a big number. That's 11 defensive backs. That means you're trimming off fat. Butler, thank you, baby Glock. Butler, right? Percy Butler. So those are the 5 safeties. And I think you're going to have 5 corners going with those 5 safeties to give you a grand total of 10 defensive backs. Anything north of that is a lot, and then that means you're trimming off fat somewhere else. So that means you're trimming off fat at tight end or running back or receiver or linebacker, which we've seen them go light at linebacker before, so it wouldn't be, anything new to us. We've seen them trim off a ton of fat at linebacker, as a matter of fact. So I still think when it's all said and done, the first 5 guys you named are the ones that are going to be here. I don't know about Sip, though, but he's such a core special teamer. It's going to be hard to kick him off. But Kendall, Juice, Forbes, and Danny are locks. All 4 of them are locks to make the football team. Sip, Castro Fields, and Wild Goose, I think, are competing for 1 spot, maybe 2 at the most, as you mentioned. Hard to see them not keeping 6 with all this talent, but 5 is the number that I'm looking at right now. And I want to see how everybody responds in the preseason. That's going to be so important. How do these guys respond in the preseason? Live bullets. That's going to determine who's going to fill out the back end, because Sip was not good at the cornerback position. Like we're not looking to keep any more Troy Apke's on the roster. You got to you got to carry your own weight as a defender too. You can't just be a core special teamer. If that were the case, Troy Apke's still on the roster. We want a guy that can do both. If pressed into action like Sip was last year, we don't need a guy that's going to go out there and gag all over himself. Now, again, Sip was a rookie, and he was pressed into action in a tough spot. Now, we weren't playing world beaters. We played the Giants, and he couldn't hold his own against bums at the receiver position. I actually like Isaiah Hodgins, but he couldn't hold his own against the Giants, okay? They had nothing at receiver pretty much last year. And they didn't even throw it in the Falcons game. So if he can't hold his own as a corner, I don't know if just off the strength of and he's a damn good special teams player, but I don't know just off the strength of his special teams ability, is he going to be here? Because you can find somebody else that can be just as effective on special teams and still contribute at their particular position group, i.e. Byron Pringle, for instance. Instead of keeping Sip as a 6th corner, you could keep Byron Pringle as a 6th receiver and get the same gunner, type of play, and get a guy that can also help you as a kickoff returner and can still contribute as a receiver if he's pressed into action. So I don't know. We'll see about Sip. I'm not as sure about him, but his special teams ability is going to be one of those things that really gives him a shot. And Castro Fields and Wild Goose are interesting. So corner is going to be a big one. Receiver is going to be another one. Tight end, running back are going to be, some conversations there. I don't think the running back one, it just depends on 4 or 3. Do they want to keep a fourth? I think that Alex Arma, because they have him listed as a running back, Alex Arma being kept as a running back is a distinct possibility. We'll see. Again, we'll see what happens. Freddie Lee, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, Freddie writes, I know I don't bless you as much as I'd like to, but with 4 kids and my wife fighting cancer in her spine for the 3rd time, money is tight. Sending blessings to you and your family. #NHO, bro. Save every single penny you have and use that to continue to fight the good fight, man. Blessings on top of blessings to you and your family, and continue to be there to support your wife as she continues her courageous fight with cancer, man. Cancer's a bitch. I say that with the utmost disdain for cancer. Cancer is one of the worst things that was ever created in life. May you and your family be eternally blessed and continue to fight. And I hope she beats it for a 3rd time and continue to kick cancer's ass. So, bro, I appreciate any and everything you can provide me with. But, bro, when it comes to stuff like that, keep all of your bread and use it for the fight. Okay. So blessings on top of blessings for you and your family, and all of y'all out there. Make sure y'all sending one up to the sky for my guy, Freddie Lee, and his family and his wife in particular. So appreciate that. Appreciate you being a member of the MOBB, and continue the good fight, man. Keep us updated on what's going on there. Red Wing 01, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. My guy, Red Wings 01 writes, so the reason AG hates Gibby nickname is because there's a character named Gibby on this Nickelodeon show called iCarly. And that's low-key where I and other teens, 20-something fans got it from, LOL. So let's talk about it, because I was going to save that for last. So I never watched iCarly. I know of the show. I know the premise of the show, but I didn't know any of the characters' names on the show. So I wouldn't know about Gibby. But I just called him Gibby because it was easy and accessible. Okay. It wasn't trying to be funny, but I deserve this. So, okay, let me backtrack a bit. So for those of you who don't know what we're referring to, I reposted a video that the Washington Commanders social media team posted on IG and Twitter, and I reposted it on Twitter on my feed. And, I quoted it by pretty much saying, I hear you loud and clear, noted, and I'll make sure that I essentially spread the word. So I've been spreading the Gibby nonsense pretty much since day one, okay? I'm back and forth between AG and Gibby, but it's a lot of Gibby. It's been 80-20 Gibby over anything else, all right? So I feel guilty for spreading the Gibby. And somebody at the very beginning of this thing said, hey, yo, bro, stop calling him Gibby. That name is whack. And I was like, well, I like Gibby. And until Antonio tells me he doesn't like Gibby, it's Gibby. Well, Antonio walked to the camera today. You know how they'll have the camera on the players as they're walking out to practice. And Antonio was walking out to practice, and he told the cameraman, like, hey, stop right there. And the cameraman's about to turn the camera. He said, no, keep the cameras running. Just stop right there. Hey, I need y'all to stop calling me Gibby. I don't know where y'all got that from, but I'm not Gibby. It's AG or it's Tone or something else, but it ain't Gibby. Gibby ain't it. Message received. He was talking to me. I'm guilty as charged. You got me. Click, clack. I'm locked up. They won't let me out. He got me. All right. So from this point forward, we got 3 options. His mama named him Antonio. I'm going to call him Antonio. So he's either Antonio, he's either AG, or he's Tone, or you can go with 24. Or you can call him Antonio Gibson, or you call him Gibson. You can call him whatever you want. Just don't call him Gibby. I'm going to go with AG. Okay, that's going to be my name of choice moving forward. All right, so I don't know where he and I don't know if he saw it from iCarly. I don't know where he heard it or he keeps hearing it. I know I'm guilty of spreading that slander, right? I'm guilty of helping the name Gibby, get traction and spread. So I'm going to do my part to reel it back in. Okay, so no more Gibby on this channel. AG is what I'm rolling with. You can go with whatever you want as long as it's not Gibby. Yeah, all right. I'm very sensitive to what people want to be called. And so he doesn't want to be called Gibby. We won't do Gibby. And I feel bad, though. I really do feel bad because I feel like I really helped. I was like a fire, right, in the forest, and I helped it spread. So I'm here to start dousing that with water to put it out. AG is what we're rolling with now. All right, AG. It took him 3 years to set us straight, though. This has been building for 3 years. I didn't know there was a character on iCarly that went by Gibby, so that's news to me. Maybe that's why he's offended by it. I don't know. Could be. Video channel. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB video channel. Writes, Mason Brooks has the pathway to start week 1. As crazy as that sounds, it is not far-fetched. It is not going to happen, but there is a pathway. There is a direct pathway. It's the same thing that we saw with Armani Rogers. Armani Rogers needed 15 things to happen last year for him to make the roster, and all 15 of them happened. And not only did those 15 things happen, he was a huge part of week 1. He caught that tight end screen in week 1. He might have had the most receiving yards of any tight end in week 1. So anything's possible. All right. What did KG say after the Celtics won? Anything is possible. Anything's possible, right? I'm not counting it out. He's not worried about starting week 1 as much as he is just trying to make this roster. I don't think he's going to do either. Make the roster, which you got to make it to be the starter week 1. I don't see him being a starter week 1 because I don't see him making a roster. But I wouldn't count him out. I would not count him out. Anyway. So that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T. Recapping day number 8 of training camp, which was, I don't want to call it lackluster because it's what the players probably needed. They needed to have, the reins pulled back a bit. EB's been cracking that whip and really, whipping them into shape and kind of changing the mentality, right? No walking. Let's go tempo. Maximizing the amount of time. Yesterday was an intense practice. It was 2 hours long. It was the first 2-hour practice of the camp period. So yesterday was my favorite practice. They'll probably be getting back to some of that tomorrow, day 9 of camp, when the pads go back on. And I think the turnout will be really good because it's Friday. And we'll see what happens tomorrow. Hopefully, Sam in the offense builds on what they did today, plays with a little bit of an edge tomorrow in practice, and continues to make some of those strides that we're seeing. One last thing before we get out of here, Rich Eisen, which I love. Rich has been talking about Washington a lot the last couple of days. I told you I've been taking in a lot of Commanders content because there's a lot out there right now. Like, we're hot right now in these streets, man. Commanders are hot. Ever since Josh Harris took over, everybody wants to talk about Magic Johnson. We're hot right now in these streets, man. All right. Name is buzzing and percolating. So Rich was talking about a surprise team with Louis Riddick. And Louis Riddick, he really thinks the Lions and the Seahawks are going to be really good this year. But he said, I'll give you a different team. And he gave him the Commanders, and he talked about the talent. He's like, look, they got some talent on offense. Their receiving core is ridiculous. Their running backs are really good. And he said, I think Sam Howell is going to surprise some people. So, and he loves our defense too. So there was that. And then, they started, and then the next day, Rich comes on and he plays the soundbite from Ron talking about the quarterbacks. Yes. And I remember I told you, Ron's been doing this whole song and dance, trying to make sure that everybody knows that it's a competition. And he's been doing this for years, right? Ever since he felt like he botched it with Dwayne in 2020. This is the thing that he does. This is his move. He did it with Heineke and Fitzpatrick in 21. He didn't do it last year. He made very clear that Wentz was QB1, that they traded for him and there was no competition. But, you know, he's reverted back to, it's a competition and he wants everybody to know it like he did in 2021. And that's cool. And Rich was like, you know, after he said, don't sleep on Jacoby, Rich went crazy like, oh, could Jacoby Brissett be the starter? I'm like, no, Rich. He's been saying the exact same thing since they signed Jacoby Brissett. You know, don't sleep on Jacoby. I'm hitting the snooze button and I'm going back to bed. Wake me up when it's preseason game number 1. All right. Anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there. Don't let anybody, you know, try to persuade you into thinking that this is anything but getting Sam ready mentally for the task at hand. Sam Howell's going to be our starting quarterback week 1. And barring anything unforeseen, he'll be the starting quarterback all the way through. So I digress. I will see most of you later on tonight. We got football. We got football. How much of it are you going to watch is the real question. Some of y'all got one possession and you get amped and then you realize this is some trash. Some of you got a quarter in you. Some of you got a half. You got to be a special type of somebody, if it's not your favorite team, to consume the entire Hall of Fame game. You're special. Even I don't do that. You're special if you do that. But whatever happens, I'm going to be live after the Hall of Fame game, maybe during the Hall of Fame game, probably during the Hall of Fame game. I'll be live at some point. And just like I said, it's not about the game. It's about what it represents. Football's back, and that's what's important. So I'll see you guys later on tonight for that. And for the rest of you, I'll see you for the podcast tomorrow. And a recap of day number 9. And then some. Anyway, I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. Until next time, got a super chat here from Edward Washington. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, Edward, writes, what's up, Lou? What's up, Ed? What's going on with you? Eddie Dub? What's good with you, man? Hope all is well. Look forward to chopping it up with you, hopefully later on tonight. Anyway, I digress. With that said, you guys have a good one. Take care. God bless. Good night.
The LouieTeeNetwork is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description.
Louie.